When President Donald Trump signed the $2.3 trillion coronavirus relief and government funding bill into law in December, so began the 180-day countdown for U.S. intelligence agencies to tell Congress what they know about UFOs. Since that time, the Pentagon has been struggling to destroy the ET myth that UFOs may be of extraterrestrial intelligence. But Christopher Mellon's actually urging people not to dismiss the ET hypothesis. So who is Christopher Mellon anyway? Christopher Mellon is a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence in the Clinton and George W. Bush administrations, and later for Security and Information Operations. He formerly served as the Staff Director of the United States Select Committee on Intelligence. You may have also caught him on Joe Rogan a few weeks ago. And he just wrote a piece called "Don't Dismiss the Alien Hypothesis." Here's what he says. The United States has the most advanced aerospace capabilities of any country and spends more than twice as much on defense as Russia and China combined. The administration and Congress concur that these objects are not classified U.S. aircraft. In the Nimitz incident and other cases, some of these vehicles have been observed doing things that we cannot replicate and do not understand. For those of you not familiar with the Nimitz case, this was written about in the New York Times on December 16th, 2017 by Leslie Kean, Ralph Blumenthal, and Helene Cooper. In this incident, David Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Jim Slate, along with Alex Dietrich, were on a routine training mission 100 miles out into the Pacific when the radio in of each of their FA-18 Super Hornets crackled. An operations officer aboard the USS Princeton and Navy cruiser wanted to know if they were carrying weapons. 2 CATM-9s, Commander Fravor replied, referring to a dummy missile that could not be fired. He had not been expecting any hostile exchanges off the coast of San Diego that November afternoon in 2004. Well, we've got a real-world vector for you, the radio operator said, according to Commander Fravor. For 2 weeks, the operator said the Princeton had been tracking mysterious aircraft. The objects appeared suddenly at 80,000 feet, then hurtled toward the sea, eventually stopping at 20,000 feet and hovering. Then they either dropped out of radar range or shot straight back up. The radio operator instructed Commander Fravor and Commander Slate, who was given a similar account, to investigate. The two fighter planes headed towards the object. The Princeton alerted them as they closed in, but when they arrived at merge plot with the object, naval aviation parlance for being so close that the Princeton could not tell which were the objects and which were the fighter jets, neither Commander Fravor nor Commander Slate could see anything at first. There was nothing on the radars either. Then Commander Fravor looked down into the sea. It was a calm day, but the waves were breaking over something that was just below the surface. Whatever it was big enough to cause the sea to churn. Hovering 50 feet above the churn was an aircraft of some kind, whitish. That was around 40 feet long and oval shaped. The craft was jumping around erratically, staying over the wave disturbance, but not moving in any specific direction, Commander Fravor said. The disturbance looked like frothy waves and foam, as if the water were boiling. Commander Fravor began a circular descent to get a closer look, but as he got near, the object began ascending towards him. It was almost as if it were coming to meet him halfway, he said. Commander Fravor abandoned his slow circular descent and headed straight for the object. But then the object peeled away. It accelerated like nothing I've ever seen, he said in an interview. He said, pretty weirded out. The two fighter jets then conferred with the operations officer on the Princeton and were told to head to a rendezvous point 60 miles away called the Cap Point in aviation parlance. They were en route and closing in when the Princeton radioed again. Radar had picked up the strange aircraft. Sir, you won't believe this, the radio operator said, but that thing is at your cap point. We were at least 40 miles away, and in less than a minute, this thing was already at our cap point, Commander Fravor, who has since retired from the Navy, said in the interview. By the time the two fighter jets arrived at the rendezvous point, the object had disappeared. The fighter jets returned to the Nimitz, where everyone on the ship had learned the Commander Fravor's encounter and was making fun of him. Commander Fravor's superiors did not investigate further, and he went on with his career, deploying to the Persian Gulf to provide air support to ground troops during the Iraq War. But he does remember what he said that evening to a fellow pilot who asked him what he thought he saw. I have no idea what I saw, Commander Fravor replied to the pilot. It had no plumes, no wings, no rotors, and outran our F-18s. But he added, I want to fly one. Back to Christopher Mellon. Mellon goes on to say, official records from the U.S. and other countries indicate that this is a global phenomenon that has been occurring since at least World War II and perhaps longer. On June 4th, 2021, the debrief confirms China confirms it has its own UFO task force. Chinese military is said to be using AI to track an increase in unidentified air conditions. First reported in the South China Morning Post, reporting Chinese analysts have been overwhelmed in recent years by rapidly mounting sightings reports from a wide range of military and civilian sources, by what the People's Liberation Army, PLA, are calling unidentified air conditions. Mellon goes on to say, we have no reason to believe that many of these objects are from China or Russia, and in fact it seems improbable, especially when we consider how long this phenomena has been observed. Consequently, the not invented here hypothesis is the only theory currently consistent with the known facts. From any vantage point, we are more likely to encounter probes that signals from ET because probes are far safer, more efficient, and more effective for purposes of space exploration. The radical capabilities and mysterious appearance of some of the vehicles being observed are consistent with what we'd expect of probes and craft from a spacefaring civilization. As Arthur Clarke famously observed, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. The idea of AI and probes being sent throughout the galaxy is not a new one. The idea of self-replicating spacecraft have been applied in theory to several distinct tasks. The particular variant of this idea applied to the idea of space exploration is known as the von Neumann probe, after being conceived of by mathematician John von Neumann, a Hungarian-American mathematician and physicist. Christopher Mellon goes on to write, there's no scientific barrier to interstellar travel, even if superluminal travel is impossible. My grandfather was born before the Wright brothers got off the ground. Now there are already a number of nations with robots on Mars, and a consortium led by Yuri Milner is designing the first probe to visit another star system. It could take only a tiny fraction of the age of the Milky Way for a spacefaring civilization traveling at 1/5 the speed of light to explore the entire galaxy. Our government should establish a cleared panel of UAP intelligence and scientific experts to study this issue. Mainstream scientists currently lack any detailed understanding of either the phenomenon or its long history, nor do they understand the range of sensor capabilities available to the US, or have the knowledge needed to understand where to look within our vast national security apparatus for answers. This has been shockingly evident in recent months, with astronomers expressing their ignorance of the UAP topic by asking embarrassing questions such as, if UFOs are real, how come commercial pilots have never seen them? And how come only Americans report UFOs? The latter statement is untrue based on what we're seeing coming out of China right now, and the debrief did a report recently on newly uncovered NASA reports reveal pilot encounters with UFOs by Micah Hanks in March 18th of 2021. The article concludes, reporting sightings of unusual lights and objects by aviation professionals is not a new phenomenon, and it is something that happens around the world on a regular basis. Mellon says, to be effective, the panel therefore needs to include people familiar with the long but obscure international and US government history of the issue, as well as the classified data and capabilities our government possesses that can be used to obtain more information. Large expenditures are not required. Progress will largely be a function of leadership, intellectual integrity, and data access and organization. I recently had the pleasure of speaking with Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb, and here's what he said about being willing to lead such an organization.
The scientific community has an obligation to examine these objects and figure out what they are. And we can do that with the existing instruments. It will not be a mystery once we collect the data. And I'm willing to be engaged in such a study myself, or to lead such a study, if there are people willing to fund it, either in the federal funding line or in the private sector.
Mellon goes on to say that someone at a high level urgently needs to be assigned responsibility to find out where these objects are coming from, how they work, and why they're here. Engineering and scientific efforts to replicate observed capabilities also require a high priority. We can no longer deny that someone has mastered technology beyond our understanding and is using it to monitor US military forces and probably much else. In some cases, such as the famous encounters of the Nimitz carrier strike group, non-human origin is presently the theory that best fits all facts. Until a better explanation emerges, it is time to squarely confront the data and record this revolutionary discovery the attention it deserves. Regardless of the source, we need a serious national effort to understand and emulate the capabilities we are observing. Regardless of the origin of these crafts, the stakes could not be higher. Ignorance is not a national security strategy, and we have never before been a nation deterred by fear of the unknown. The benefits that might result could include massive technological breakthroughs and revolutionary advances and insights that might otherwise take eons to acquire. The only responsible course of action is to proceed expeditiously with open minds, perhaps jointly with other nations, to make faster progress and mitigate growing international tensions and rivalries. How could we turn aside knowing what we know now? There's really no choice other than to press forward in pursuit of the truth with the hope and expectation that new frontiers of knowledge will be discovered for our nation, and hopefully for the benefit of all mankind. So what do you think? Leave your comments below. Tell me what you think about this phenomenon. Is it ET? Is it interdimensional? Is it US tech? Is it China? Is it Russia? What do you think? If you enjoyed this content, please click the subscribe button below. Click the bell so you get notified anytime we go live with interviews or roundtables.